Hey everyone, myself Rohan, and today we are going to understand what GraphQL really is. We'll be covering this video in two parts. First will be understanding the front end, and the next part will be the back end. Today what we are going to cover is the back end along with the basic understanding of why do we need GraphQL. So let's jump right into the video. So before writing the code, my target is to explain why do we need GraphQL and what could be the problem that it solves. So suppose whether you are creating any front end or a back end, and if you are a Web2 or Web3 doesn't matter, GraphQL can be used in both sense. So suppose you are creating a web application and in which you have a front end and the back end. So this is the front end and this is the server back end. The front end, right, and the back end. Apologies for my handwriting. And you are getting some data from the back end to the front end. Suppose you only need a name of the users which you have been looking for to showcase in your front end. For example, you need names to showcase here only, names. You have to show names of all the users present here only, and in order to get those values from the backend, you call out the API which contains the names, but it does not only contains the name. The backend API is created in such a way that it contains names, user details, other credentials, phone numbers, or marital status or something like that. All of these values you will be like fetching directly from the backend, and you don't need those values. You only need the name, right? You have to show the names, and I'm sure any of you who has done front end integration or back end work, you might have faced this issue where you want to just get the names, but since the array contains lot of data including names, you fetch the complete API. This problem can be solved using GraphQL. Suppose if you want to fetch the ID of the another problem which it solves, let me explain you that also. Suppose you want to get an API which contains ID, names, date of birth, marital status, and phone numbers, email IDs, everything, and it contains one more field which is important and which you need, which is the ID field. That ID field will be used in another API to call the requested user. For example, you called an API which contains an ID field. Now that ID will be passed to a different API, and to send the request, and you'll get the response back from the backend. Now the work is complete. You fetched the ID by fetching the complete data and then passed it, and as a result you got the details. But as a result, what you did was you fetched the complete details instead of just fetching the ID which you need. Now what could your question would be like, Rohan, what would be the problem if you fetch all the data? Like if you want also you can fetch it, if you don't want, you what would be the problem basically? The thing is, when you fetch the complete data instead of fetching the required amount of data, what you create is you use or consume unwanted amount of bandwidth from while fetching the data from the backend. Now this can be reduced or minimized by using GraphQL. What GraphQL does is it creates it acts kind of a layer between front end and back end, and it only gives the required amount of data in the front end, and as a result the bandwidth of the usage gets reduced, and the front end or the application gets more smooth and working gets more perfected. I hope I'm clear with the solution which it gives, GraphQL. Now let's get into the coding part, how we will improve the functionality of backend. Today we are going to do backend. So how we'll be improving the functionality of the backend using GraphQL. So I have two files in my VS Code. For those of you who are following, let's create a VS Code, and inside this VS Code we'll be creating two files, which is a client and the server. Today we are going to work on the server because we are working on the backend, and in the next video we'll be covering the front end part. So let's jump into the server part. Let me stop it. Yeah, so we are currently into the server, as you can see here. And now what we are going to do is we will be creating an npm init and -y, so that we'll create a package.json file. After that, what we are going to do is we are going to create we are going to install two packages. First is the GraphQL, which we are going to use, and second will be the Apollo server component, package manager, which will be used to create the basic functionality and make the use case easier for the GraphQL usage. I'll show you why we use Apollo client or Apollo server. Today we are using backend, so we'll install Apollo server. Let's do it. npm install GraphQL and @apollo/server. If you want, you can check the documentation also. And let's wait for a couple of seconds for it to install. Yeah, so it has been installed now, Apollo server and GraphQL. Let's create a server file, server.js, in which we are going to write a backend. So let's understand how we initialize our backend using GraphQL and Apollo server. Previously we were using creating an app.listen. We were using app.js, app.listen. Why is it like this? App.listen on port 3000, 4000 or something like this. This was the previous structure, right? Today what we are going to do is we'll be having a bit different structure. Let's understand what we are going to do. Let's import first Apollo server, right? And next we'll be importing is standalone start stand. It's not start stand. All right, let me just from Apollo server /standalone. Yeah, start standalone. Yeah, now we are going to create a server. We'll be creating an instance first. Server as new Apollo server, and in this curly bracket we'll be passing two values. I'll show you what are those. Now we'll be creating a URL. We'll be getting a URL from start standalone. It will be an async await function. I will have to await it, and inside this first we'll be passing this server like this server, and then we'll be listening on port. Let's listen on port 4000, right? And when this is successful, we'll be running console log server is running on port. Not only port, just give the complete URL, right? So as to get the URL. Now the main structure, what will be passed here? We'll be passing two values, type definitions and mutations. Resolvers. Yeah, type defs and resolvers. Let's understand what are these things. These will be a variable here. Const type definitions will be used as backtick, and const resolvers will be used like an object. Yeah. Now let me explain it here only. Okay. We have four values, you can say. Please, I would request you to be attentive while listening to this, because this is the important part. We'll be having four values. First is type defs, right? Next is resolvers. Next will be query, and the last is mutation. All right, let's understand what these two are first, and then we'll be knowing what these two are. First, type defs contain the definitions of all the functions which can be used while fetching any data. What could be fetched data? I'll be creating a constant value here only. For example, if I create users, which will be an array which contains an ID of this is a static data which I'm creating instead of fetching the data from the internet. If you want to fetch the data, this will be the exact structure, just you have to fetch the data instead of directly using this constant value. So what could be the constant value? We will be having ID name as, let's say it's Rohan, and then age of 45, and a boolean value is married, true, right? Let's have four values. IDs will be unique, right? Names will be Yash, any name, Michael and Jacob. Age will be something random. Marital status, let's change it in like individually. Yeah, all the values are almost unique. So instead of fetching data, I'm just showing this constant dummy datas so as to make it easier. So where was I? I was in defining these four values. Let's understand it once again. These the type definition and resolvers. First understand these, and then we'll understanding what query and mutations are. Pay attention. Type definitions are used to define the type. We are not defining any working thing, but we are just defining the types of the data which, or the functions which we are going to use, and the return type of the values which we are going to get. Mostly those will be functions, so type definitions will contain all the functions. Resolvers will also contain the functions, but they will be containing actual working functions. For example, if you want to create a function which is create user, type definition will be containing the definition of that function, like the values which it can get. It will be no value because we are getting all the users, we don't need any argument as value, and the return type will be the user, array of users. This will be the definition in the type definition, but in resolvers it will be having actual function, like function create get all users, and will be returning users, like that, the actual function. Now what is this query and mutation? Let's understand this. Query and mutations both are present in type defs and resolvers. Both of them, query and mutations, are present. What are those? Let's understand it through an similar case. For example, if you have worked with MongoDB, you might understand it in a better way. For those of you who haven't, I'll explain it. In MongoDB, what happens is we have four basic operations, CRUD operations, right? It will be create, read, update, and delete, right? Now, if you want to separate these values according to their working, you will be understanding that create, update and delete, all these three value changes the state of the variable which we have. For example, if we have a list of users in the MongoDB database, and if we create a file, we'll change that list. If we update a file, if we want to change the value of a data which is present in MongoDB database, will be changing. If we delete any data, we'll still change the values present in the database. Only read operation doesn't change anything, right? So if we separate this, it will be separated on like based on the working of it. It will be separated into two parts, which will be first is a read. It is a read operation, which is read, and create, update and delete will be all in the other place, which will change the state of the variable present in the database. Similarly, the read operation, which only reads the value, is equal to the similar to the query value, and mutation is equivalent to all the other three, like create, update and delete. By name only you can understand mutation means to mutate, means to change, enhance or update, something like that. And query means to just pass on a query, that's something like that. You can understand it based on that. So I hope I'm clear, and if you couldn't understand, please go through the video once again. This was the important part. Type definition is the definition, resolvers are the actual function and not just the definition, and query and mutation are present in type definitions also and resolvers also. The difference is that query values are the values which are contains only read operations, and mutations are the value which actually changes the value. Let's understand it through an example also. If you want to read the user values, for example, get all users, it will be a query operation. Why? Because it is just reading the data, right? But if you want to update users, it will be a mutation based object like value, because it is changing the state of the variable present in the database or something which is present here. Since I'm not using any database, I'm just showing the dummy data from here. You can understand it through this also. Let's work on the type definitions, type devs. Now, in both type definitions and resolvers, I explained that both contains query and mutation, right? Let's write down query for type definition. For each value in type definition, first word will be type of query. First we'll write query. Let's kind of like this, and first will be a query like the function, definition of the function, because in type devs we only have definitions. So let's write the definition of function, which is read only. What could be it? Create user, not create user, but get all users. Get all users only reads the value, so let's write get all users, this function. And if you want to get the return data type, you will pass it like colon and then return type. What will be its return type? An array. What would be the contents of an array? All the values, these values. So these values should also have a type, which is an object containing ID, name, age, is married, right? We will define that data type in this type devs only. Let's name it users, and we'll just write it here only, right? We'll create this user, which is an object containing ID, name, age and is married. But for now I'm just writing it here only. What could be the next function, which is read only, and we have to define it. Get all user by ID. Get get not all user but just user by ID. In this you have to pass an ID as an argument, and in return it will give you like user, right? And so in order to pass an argument, what you need to do is you need to create a bracket and pass it an ID. Now for everything which you pass, you have to define its type. For example, you pass an argument of type ID, right? Like here you have passed ID. What could be the type of ID? Now GraphQL provides a separate type for IDs, which is an ID only. And if you want to make it important, like you have to pass a value here, otherwise this won't be working, this function won't be working. If you have to define it like that, you have to pass an exclamation mark. And now what will it return? Will return an object of a similar value. For example, if you pass 3 here, it will return an object with an ID of 3. But what is this object? Object's type, it's a user, which will be defining further. We have just used the name here, we'll define it further. Now I don't think there is any read only value here as a definition. Now we have to write the mutation. Since I said query and mutation both are present in type devs and resolvers, we are writing for type devs, we are going to write the mutation. Type mutation. Now understand mutation. Mutation contains all the other values which we defined. What was it? It was create, update and delete. Read was only these values. Get all users, get user by ID. Now create or update or delete can be used here. Let's use only one of the mutation. For example, we create a function which will create a user. Create user. This is not just a read only operation, it's a writing operation. Like we are changing the value, we are adding the value. Create user, what are we gonna pass into it? We'll be passing the name, age, is married. ID will already automatically it will increment. We only need to pass the name, and we have to define its type also here. This is the structure. We pass the name, and since it's important, the type will add an exclamation mark. Next will be age. GraphQL provides for a numeric value, GraphQL provides 2 types, which is an int or a float. Sorry, I apologize. So the age could be a number, and since it's an int or a float, if we want to get the number as whole number, we only need to pass int value, and after that is married, right? Is married is a boolean value. For boolean definition, we define it as boolean, and it is important. And in return, it will give me the user which has been created. This was the mutation type. I hope I'm clear up until now. Right. Now let's understand the next type, which is the user, which we were talking about up until now. User will be of type ID, name. ID will be defined type of ID. Name will be a string, right? And age will be an int, and is married will be a boolean. Now for resolvers, I hope you remember what I told. Resolvers and type definition both contain query and mutation. Type definition only has the definition. Resolvers contain the actual functions which we are going to implement. let's write the query first. Query will be all the read-only operations, which is get users, get all users, get all users, which is a function which will return users. I told you it is a working function. And then we'll be having get user by ID. Was it that? Yeah, ID. Now here we will be passing two values, which is an argument and a parent. For example, parent and args, like this. What the main concern is, yeah, make sure to add a comma and yeah, like this. The parent is not the point of concern for now. Args is the place where all the arguments are present. For example, if we define the mutation of create user or get user by ID and we passed args as ID here, this will be present in the args. We have to like separately open up. For example, if we use ID, will be having it as args.id. Right, now we have to find this and return it. Const like directly just return it, return users dot find. How can we find user? Right, like the name should be, we have to compare it, right? ID user dot ID is equal to ID or not. We will get that. These two were read operations. Now let's define mutation, which is a write operation. Mutation, right? We have to pass a comma here. Yeah. For mutation, we have create user. Let's write the create user. Now, we will have for this we'll be having parent and args, which I defined. Parent won't be used, arguments is what it all contains, right? And here we are going to separately spread all the values, which is names, age is married, and we are going to use kind of I forgot the name of this actually. We use most often in the JavaScript. I hope you remember. Make sure to comment it in the comment section. What is the name of it? Next, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new user which will be pushed into this array. New user as ID. ID will be incremented automatically by the length of the user. For example, users.length +1, and we'll convert it into string so as to make it easier to convert into the ID value, right? After that, we'll be having name as name, age as age. I mean, you don't have to write if the key value pairs are same, you don't have to write the values. You can just write the keys and move along, but I have a habit of writing it, so I follow it. Now we'll be pushing that value. User dot push new user. I hope I'm clear. So this was the mutation. Let's run our function and see if it works or not. Node, we are using Node to run this. Server.js. No, we have some issue, which is import statement outside a module. All right. Actually, what we are doing is we are importing cannot use import statement outside a module. We are using common JS. we have to use type as module so that it will work in the latest ECMAScript format. If you are also facing this, just go to the package.json and write type as module. Then you can directly import these values. Otherwise, you would have to write it as const Apollo server equals require Apollo server. But in order to avoid it, just go to package.json and use type module. Let's run server.js. Yeah, it's running. Let's test it on the main section, like in the browser. Just a minute. Yeah. So in the browser, let's go to this server of port 4000 localhost 4000, and you will be greeted kind of with a good looking UI which has been created using Apollo server only. Now in this you can directly use these query and fetch the details according to your needs. For example, I had previously these values. For example, if I want to get the user details of all the users, what I'm going to do is I'll simply create a query named new query. Let's new query, and what I'm going to do is I'll call this function get all users, and inside this you have to pass the values which you want to get. For example, name, what was the age, and is married. Let's get the ID also, right? And just call the query. Here in the get all users, you are getting name, age, is married. All the values, let me be here for once. Yeah, all the values which you defined here in this one, you're getting here. Now the main part, if you want just the name of the users which are present, you can just pass the name here and you'll get all the name. And by using this by using GraphQL in such manner, you tend to avoid unwanted bandwidth of the like server side which you want to fetch the data. If you want to just get the name and is married, you can do that also. So you got all these values simply, and you avoided unwanted usage of bandwidth. If you want just is married, you'll do that also. You're not providing anything. If you want just ID, just do that. Everything. This is how you can use GraphQL for your use case, and this was the basic structure. If you don't understand this is the main crux. If you don't understand, make sure to watch the video again. And the reason I separated the video into two parts was to make you understand both and understand all of it perfectly before moving forward, because front end will be a bit similar. It won't be that hard, but the main crux was this only to understand. Now you can try one thing which I will tell you. Create a, like, this is a kind of to-do task for you only. I was working and I thought to use it, and I implemented that, and that also worked. So what you have to do is create an employee with same values, not same, change all the values, right? Change the names of all, and pass in an ID which is common to both. Like check if you can get the value, like create a type definition where you can get the value if you pass an id of 2 and you get the name of both the user present in both of them. Suppose here you have um, like Titan or something, and both the IDs are 2. You have to pass, you have to create a function in the query in such a way that ID with contains 2, the name should be displayed here in this here. ID whose the values whose ID is 2, their names should be displayed here. Create a function inside the query in that manner. You can practice it, it will help you to understand how it all works. Apart from that, I hope you liked the video, and this was it. And if you found it informative, make sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, follow for more. Make sure to be ready for the next part. Thank you.